I need to go there.
I have 6 o'clock, so I will call the meeting to order. Clerk, please do the roll call.
Mayor Frederick,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Winkler.
Here.
Councilmember Elliott.
Here.
Councilmember Basaw.
Here.
Councilmember Walton.
Here.
Councilmember Gassick and Councilmember Wargo. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now is the time for public comment, excluding new business and public hearings. There's a 3-minute time limit. Clerk, is anyone emailed or called in?
No.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak? Okay, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Oppose? The agenda is approved. We'll start off tonight with item 4.1, which is a presentation, the DuPont Comprehensive Plan Update. And Director Kincaid is going to cover that information for us. So go ahead, Barb, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And to my left is Siddharth. Siddharth is with Fair and Peers, and he's here. If we have technical transportation, he and his firm worked on the transportation element. So I'll go through these slides, Siddharth, and if there's a question, these are nice. We can just be very informal and
Yeah, do you want
discuss
questions
them.
along the way?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. So, and some of you may have already heard most of this last night at the Planning Commission, but I thought it might be helpful because it's going to be coming to you with a recommendation from the Planning Commission fairly soon to just sort of give a presentation, make sure that you are all up to speed and, and if there are questions that we can discuss those earlier in the process than when you're actually sitting up there with this thing in front of you. But so the comprehensive plan overview, the process to date has included, go ahead if you would, Marcy. Thank you. Kickoff meeting in January 2025. We held open houses. We had the November 4 open house with four people maybe. And so then we redid it with better notification for November 14. We had 35 people attending. So that was very good to see that turnout. Had some good conversation with folks. Since we started our kickoff and have been working with the Planning Commission on the comprehensive plan update, we've had about 20 public meetings. So the public has been invited. And in many cases, we worked with the Tree Commission. We invited the Historical Society to come in and the Chamber. So we've really done our best to make sure that we were, working with the different groups on these plan elements. SEPA has to be done, and SEPA is the State Environmental Protection Act. So SEPA checklist was prepared on August 25th, and then we issued a determination of non-significance on October 31. We did not receive any comments. There's a comment period associated with that, a 14-day comment period, and didn't have any challenge after the comment period, appeal after the comment period closed. Last night, oh my gosh, it says 2017. Who put that there? So the Planning Commission hearing held that is my name. So the Planning Commission hearing was last night on November 17. We had, participants, which was nice to give testimony. And the next steps, Marcy, are to the Department of Commerce needs to review this draft plan. They have 60 days to review, so that's under their review, as does the Puget Sound Regional Council. So they have the draft copies. This Puget Sound Regional Council actually has to certify our plan. Tribal Consultation is sending a letter directly out, to make sure that.
You're already on.
So I'm sorry.
That's okay. Do I need to stop
And
talking?
I didn't
and
want
take
to
a-
interrupt, so.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I just, really briefly, you said from 4 to 35 people. Was there any kind of, at the meeting last night, a kind of general consensus about questions, concerns that kind of the umbrella that lots of them were under at all?
I thought I'm glad you asked, because I think that the people that we heard from last night, one, just really simple thing to do. Renee Buck is like, your natural environment chapter really needs to have some maps, topography maps. And I agree with her. So we're going to
Okay.
insert some additional maps. That's easy. And then we heard, where comments pertaining to maybe that the language wasn't strong enough, needed to be, more, I don't want to say focused, but the words that had a strength behind them, and as well as timelines and for getting these things done. So I think that would be something that first of all, the planning commission, we need to talk about that, because we just held the hearing, took the comments, closed it. And so we're scheduled to really have a conversation about that. But that's what we heard.
What did they mean language wasn't strong enough?
Well, that when you say things, so, we have to remind ourselves that the comp plan is a policy document. So you're walking this fine balance between being too squishy and not, and saying things that just don't really mean anything. They don't have any meaning, or saying things that are so firm that there's no flexibility, in between there. So I think what people were saying is like, it's a little bit, some of these words are too squishy, like encourage and things like that. But we had
Okay.
we had gone through, and we had long conversations about using stronger, actionable words.
Okay.
But there were people that felt like we could go further.
So a level of specificity to the words, not just the word itself.
More like you're going to do it,
Okay.
not just
action.
try to
Okay.
do it, achieve to do it, but you will do these things.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you will do
That-
these things by a certain timeline.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, can I,
You were the only
Sorry.
one there, though, that had that comment.
right, I was the one who made a lot of those comments. As a citizen, mind you.
Yeah.
And when I talk about timelines, what's interesting is that there are timelines for transportation, and timelines for capital facilities, and timelines for one other section, I think, but there aren't timelines for the others. And so
Right.
that was my comment. It's like, if we have it
makes
for
sense.
one, and timelines are really general. It's 2 to 4 years, 4
Yeah.
to 7 years, 7 to 10
range.
years. So it's,
Mhm.
yeah, so it's, anyway, those are my comments. And language, there's one thing that particularly said, we want aspire to conduct, and that's like, well, let's just say conduct. So anyway.
Okay.
And I think, yeah, I mean, those are good points. And I think that you have to kind of think that up through about in terms of, the overall capacity and funding. And, when we say we're going to do something, and we haven't really thought through whether we can pull it off. And I appreciate you clarifying, 2 years, 4 years. Unfortunately, the comp plan has got lots of stuff that we've never done, and you pointed that out. So I want to be careful that we don't give people ideas that we're going to do stuff that we don't do, because then we lose trust in this document. And so we can talk more about that for sure. I'm sure we will. But anything else?
No, thank you for that. Just did
Yeah.
help to know what the general. kind of-
Yeah, absolutely. So the Planning Commission is going to meet at their regularly scheduled meeting on December 8th to deliberate on the testimony, and to formulate a recommendation to transmit to City Council. So I have moved the schedule, probably from what you have seen on the tracking sheet, is the City Council's first reading of the draft ordinance and the plan would take place on December 16, with the second reading and adoption not until January 20th, because we have, the state of the city, and then we have, unless I got the weeks wrong, but I think January 20th is the way that the calendar laid it out. So that's what we need to get done to get to the finish line on this for adoption. Next slide, please. So the proposal is to amend the comprehensive plan. This is our required, Growth Management Act, periodic update. So it's not just any old annual amendment. It's a requirement from the state. The amendment process is defined in our DuPont Municipal Code, Chapter 25-170, which we've been following that. And it's also following the actual Growth Management Act statute itself in 3670A. 130, sections 4 and 5 are specific to these periodic updates of the comprehensive plan in terms of the schedule. And as you know, we're a year behind on getting ours done. So it is what it is. It took a long time for us to get our sub-area plan adopted, and because there was a lot of work there. But this proposal, under these little bullets here, I want to just sort of speak. When we did the first kickoff, what we talked about is, because time was so short, because we had to really do some things that were going to be pretty intensive just to satisfy the new House bills that had been passed through the legislature, that there are some of these chapters that we probably weren't going to be able to do much with. So the scope of this periodic update was really focusing our efforts on making sure that we are complying with state law. We did some other things along the way, but with that said, I guess I just want to make sure that we all know that there's more work to do. This is not ever a finished document, and that we start to docket and do some meaningful planning for each year's amendment. What would we pick up? What would be the priority to pick up in next year's amendment, for example? So House Bill 1220, the step housing, House Bill 1110, the middle housing, and House Bill 1293, the ADU. These are all familiar to you after going through the sub-area plan, so that's helpful. Next slide, please. So this is just showing you the elements in the plan. I'm sure you already all know that. The chapter titles, introduction, the background, the land use, economic development, natural environment, historic cultural resources, parks and rec, housing, transportation, capital facilities, and the Old Fort Lake sub-area plan is a chapter on its own in the comprehensive plan.
Quick question on this one. I've had an opportunity to go through and review the draft that's posted there. The one thing that's not listed here that I remember from the Old Fort Lake, there was a lot of updating on the DMCs as far as like lot size, coverage and everything. Will that be included in this document as far as the overall? I know Old Fort Lake has theirs.
Yeah.
And so how about the rest of the city?
So great question. Thank you for asking it. So when we took the sub-area plan through, we took it through as a package. So we not only updated the planning document, we also concurrently adopted new regulations. And those regulations are now in our DMC. So what we will do, and actually I should have put that in the next steps, when we get through adopting this comprehensive plan update, then we will immediately launch into the regulation amendments, the DMC amendments. In fact, we already have a consultant looking at and starting audit of what is going to need to be amended. So that's going to be, and we actually, on that one, what was so kind of upsetting, the state stuff it always comes at you in this particular career and all of your other careers, I'm sure. But in this one, the state, as you remember, they gave us 6 months after we did our periodic update to get all of those code changes done. So it's something that will take place. So you will not see that here. You're going to see an amended future land use map, which is part of the comp plan. But the actual zoning map amendment and like I said, the regulations that we'll need to amend in the DMC will be a next phase.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Barb, I have one additional question. For the State Farm property, is this already covered under everything we have here, or we have to do an update in future year?
We don't, because we already went through that rezoning of the State Farm to make it mixed use. So it's already mixed use. I think, we made very few changes to the land use, but that one had already been done. So the map reflects that.
Okay.
Barb, sorry, some
No,
great
it's
stuff.
good. This is good.
Yeah, you mentioned this is kind of a living document, working document. It can change and probably will. Are there set times throughout the year that it will be reviewed, or is it just as needed when changes are brought to you that have to be addressed? Does you know what I'm saying? Are there like 3-month cycles of looking at this no matter what, or?
No,
How does
it's
that
the
work?
no matter what, it's the 10-year periodic update, no matter what. But I encourage you all to be thinking about your priorities in terms of tasking the planning commission with what do they want to put on their amendment docket for every single year, because we have the ability to do those amendments every year.
Okay,
And
got it.
I think that's important.
So sorry. Previously, you could only amend it once a year. Is
You-
that still
we-
the same?
Still once a year, unless there's certain provisions, if it's related specifically to budget,
Okay.
then you have, you can, if you're connecting it with the budget, you can. Remember, we kind of twisted around a little bit with the impact fees and whether or not we could do that. And then we felt a little bit squeamish, and so we decided not to. But yeah, if it's a budget amendment to the capital facilities element, because of budget, you can do it a second time.
Okay. Thank you.
So on the next slide, so then what I'm doing here is hopefully very briefly just going through each chapter and just pointing out the high level stuff here. And again, stop me with any specific questions, because you all have heard this before and you've read the draft. And so it's like, but at any rate, so we've got chapter 1 is the introduction. That's where you find the vision statement. We did not change the vision statement from the existing plan. The decision was that it was as written, it was good. If we wanted to change the vision statement in the future, if you all felt that needed to be done, then we would launch a pretty big public process to be able to get vision if for whatever reason you thought that needed to be changed. Chapter 1 has guiding principles, and so these are something that are new. I feel like they are very well done, because part of the state was about, inclusivity, equity, and displacement goals and policies. And so we developed these guiding principles that were around these 5 areas, with some principles to guide the plan, the goals and policies throughout the read of this document. So economic prosperity, well-being, environment, equity, sustainability, and resiliency. So we're starting with the big vision statement. We're going down to these kind of big guiding principles that are centered around these themes, these what we feel are important themes. And then as you work through each plan chapter, the consistency of the language and whether or not you see the vision and these guiding principles being supported by the goals and policies. Bless you. Next slide, please. So the background and context is found in chapter 2. That's very data centric. It looks at, development patterns. It looks at land use, influences, constraints. It looks at all the population characteristics, current land uses, housing and employment growth and capacity. So that's kind of, we'll breeze through these, but this is setting the stage for trying to understand what was, what is, and what may happen in terms of, again, guiding the goals and policies in the plan. So the next slide, you see just snapshots of some of that data, and without getting really into it, the population growth. This one I think is, not a surprise to us, but in terms of population growth, in the past, we always looked at population growth, a percentage that would be a projection of the census, which isn't a lot for us if we really were to use that growth percentage. But because the targets, because of the PSRC and all that trickle down from what is anticipated to happen, which is much bigger than what the census is a historical tracking, what happened historically. But what we're looking at is a big difference from the historical growth projection that we in the past would have used for a plan like this. We're now using these much bigger target numbers based on you know, the analysis that's been done of the growth that is expected to occur, and it's not based on historical data numbers at all. We looked at ethnicity and ethnic profile. So we've got, you know, a majority of white population in DuPont, but we do have strong representation, more stronger than some other areas with other ethnic groups. And pardon the typo there. Next slide is just looking at employment and job growth. And so you can see that chart on the left. We've got a lot of professions here, but the main ones are in education, healthcare, and public administration. The bar down at the bottom is showing that DuPont jobs growth has been steady. You know, especially if you take the 2001 to 2020 growth, you can see how we have been creating more jobs here in DuPont. Next slide. And then this chart here, pie chart here, is looking at the housing type. So no surprise, we have a majority of 64% of our housing stock is single family detached. Although I will say, if you compare DuPont with other cities, this is not bad. 64% of single family detached is actually not bad. I mean, it's a better mix than you see in a lot of other cities. So, right. That is what that's kind of the flavor of chapter 2, lots of data, lots of, you know, like I said, and then you move into chapter 3. So the chapter 3 is all about the land use. And this is where you'll see the actual map for land use. So the overall policy direction that we've taken in the land use is really to make sure to clarify intent, add what we were hoping to add is more specific policy wording in our update about addressing and planning for growth. You see the guiding principles where we are adding and goals and policies that are focusing on promoting public health, safety, and welfare. That wasn't really in the old plan. Stronger language around the development that would enhance our neighborhood and the historic village, our neighborhoods and historic village. This street system to provide all modes of transportation, and trying to have goals and policies around community equity and culture and enhancing our environments. And again, I'll say that the redundancy here, like for example, you see this street system goals and policies. What you want to be able to track as you're really following these chapters is internal consistency. So that's why you see something about transportation in the land use chapter, because we're consistently repeating these. And so they all are supposed to all bind together in a cohesive way, all these chapters. Next slide, please. So this is getting a slide here of the growth targets, and we're all pretty familiar with those darn growth targets. But 2020 to 2044, you can see that in 2020 population, employment, and housing units, but then what we were expected to on these adopted growth targets were an additional planning for an additional 5,184 persons, 1,177 jobs, and 2,096 housing units. So you see that for our 2044 total. Those are the numbers that we had to keep planning for, and I use the word capacity over and over again because we don't create those housing, we don't develop those housing units, we don't actually create those jobs, but we were expected to make sure that we have land that is zoned for them to come, and that's how we think about this. So, you know, the GMA is requiring that we plan for those numbers, and that's what we've done in this. We've successfully achieved that. Next slide is talking a little bit about the housing capacity. And this one, if you remember, was just kind of a head scratcher because not only did we have target numbers for population, employment, and housing, it also gave us target numbers to meet these different income bands for housing. So the good news is we've been able to achieve that in this plan. And if you're wondering how, Commerce came up with a tool, and we did a land capacity analysis that's an appendix to this plan, where they talked about, well, certain housing types. When you look at your different land use designations and your zones, if you are allowing these types of housing in these zones, you can count them in these different income bands. And that's just kind of a simple way of saying that's how we did that, how we managed it. So our numbers on this one, the allocation, which is basically a target for us to meet, 500 and some, the permanent supportive housing and non-permanent supportive housing, those were lumped together, even though they are different. They're lumped together in the income band of meeting that 0 to 30% of the area median income. Then you have the next band of the extremely low, which is the below 30 to 50. We were allocated at 389. The very low is the 50 to 80, low 80 to 100, and then moderate. So as you move your way from left to right there, you look at the allocation from left to right. And then what's really important here is the capacity that we have calculated, and then the surplus. So you can see at the very bottom that we were able to show our work in this plan that we have a surplus of land that is zoned and available to meet these housing needs. Okay, next. Just stop me if you interrupt at any point. I guess I could pause, but I know we have a long night, and so I know we need to keep moving. So, this is the FLUME, the future land use map right here. And I'm going to go through now briefly. Again, this is all in chapter 3. I'm going to talk through the changes. We didn't make a lot of changes, but I'm going to explain those here so you know what we are proposing at this time. So if you'd go to the next slide, please. So what I see as the big change is that the existing, this property, you see it on the left is a number 2 and the right is a number 2 circle, where Manchester Place, that's currently zoned, designated and zoned to be manufacturing resource park. We're proposing to change that to high density residential, HDR, simply because we've had multiple things coming in that what it is zoned for currently is an MRP. Largely, you had the warehouse. People were trying to figure out how to fit a warehouse on that property. Basically, it's not suitable for a warehouse. You've got big setbacks from the wetlands, and you've got constraints from the oaks that have to be protected there. So in our mind, it seemed to be fitting not only with the adjacent, in between the adjacent uses for housing on the left and commercial on the right, but that you could get housing in there at a high density residential, which would basically mean apartments, the R12, establishing that because you could do that with a smaller footprint, less impact to the land itself, and make that a viable residential enclave.
Just a quick question or crosswalk. That also helps us, doesn't it, meet our permanent supportive and non-PSH by having that type of housing?
Yeah, we, in that analysis that I just described a little bit ago, we are assuming that you would go with this.
Okay.
And that's factored in. If you
okay.
don't go with it, then we have to redo it.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
The, you see then the 1 and the 3, Williamson Place property, on either side of Center Drive. This is just a housekeeping thing. So back in the day, you had part of it, was zoned industrial. And of course it is an industrial use there that's already been developed. But then across Center Drive, it was zoned to be, the whole thing was zoned to be commercial, but the map was never updated. So this is just the housekeeping to make sure that the map is consistent with the ordinance that was passed several years ago. Then on the next page, you've got a bunch of little circles here, but it looks like a lot, but it truly isn't. Essentially what we've done, the other big change besides this Manchester Place zoning, potential zoning change, was to create a new zone in the city for civic land designation, civic. And so we'll have to, if you go for this, then we'll also have to create a zone with the uses under it. But the reason why we felt this was important is because property that is owned by the city, City Hall, where we intend to put a community center across the road here, where our water towers are, where the public schools are, these are all uses, whether they are intended uses or already pre-existing uses that are civic uses. And so having them have to comply with what they are zoned now, like one residential, a lot of them residential, just doesn't make sense. And it also isn't communicating what this property is really intended for. So that's where we thought it made good sense. And I think, where I really started thinking about this is when we did the PFAS facilities, because you had the underlying zoning, residential zoning, and it required us to do things that you wouldn't ordinarily have to do in the process to permit the PFAS on your own utility. So that's where I started to think like, well, this doesn't make sense. Other than that, what we did, it looks a lot different. It will look a lot different to you when you have full-sized maps side by side with the existing and the proposed, but we haven't changed the use or the intensity, but what we've done is compressed the categories. So right now we have a zoning, a flume map and a zoning map that's a one for one. And that's not always necessary. So we took where the comprehensive plan map has, R5, R3, R4, R5, and maps those areas. We've compressed that to be a low to medium residential land use designation. We don't intend to change the zones, though. The zones would stay the same unless we have conversation, and there's some intent to do that. The high density right now is in our comp plan shown as the R12. So we're just saying, let's call that high density. The mixed use, we have the mixed use and the mixed use 2. We're saying, let's just make that mixed use. And what's nice about this is that it gives you more flexibility if you did want to entertain any zoning, as long as it's designated for low to medium residential, you could tweak the zones without coming back through and redoing your comp plan, because your intent is shown here that could be a range of those things there. So that is really it. And then you go to that next, which just shows you the Hoffman Hill well site, because we couldn't figure out how to show that any other way that would go to a civic use. That's everything in the land use chapter 3. The next chapter 4 is economic development, and it was disappointing, but we told you early on we don't have the bandwidth to do much with this chapter. It needs work, but we kind of tried to clean it up a little bit, updated things that needed to be updated, and tried to make the goals and policies a little cleaner, but it's really largely been untouched, other than maybe nicer, hopefully, or nicer formatting, and the words are a little plainer. We are hoping in the policy that we have in that chapter right now that it's working to achieve a balance between economic development, but equity and environmental health. So we have maybe a couple new goals and policies that sort of try to achieve that balance. Attracting a diverse spectrum of commercial and industrial, and strengthening our regional transportation infrastructure improvement goal. That's a new one. And also encouraging more of a variety to market tourism and build on our existing assets. So those are goals and policies. While the ideas were kind of there, we tried to pull them out and make them stronger in the chapter. Then these slides are just kind of what kind of data is in there that we had to update. And, you look at the sources of revenue, the sales tax, the property tax. Next slide. We looked at the economic assets of the city, what those look like, employers, that sort of thing. So we updated that data in this chapter. Next slide. So the natural environment chapter, this one is, it's big because there's just a lot to talk about, but it's all the inventory and description of the critical areas in the city. Critical areas being your geology, your wetlands, your streams, any natural features, habitat, things like that. Well, we have protections in place under SEPA for the natural environment. We also wanted to make sure that at the local level, we were doing more, if there was an opportunity to do more in terms of protecting these natural environment assets. And the policy direction, like it says, is really strengthening those protections. And then the new language here is centered around the more protection. Actually, we don't have anything in this chapter that talks about the tree canopy. Now we've added that into this chapter. So.
Quick question. So when I was reading through this, there was a section called, it was the floodplain. And is that primarily Edmonds Marsh and the Edmonds Village? Is that our floodplain?
The floodplain, we have just the FEMA mapped areas are the floodplain that we go by. So yes, Edmund Marsh, where it could flood. At one point in time, it was mapped by FEMA as a potential floodplain.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah. Bless you. So then, chapter 6 is historic and cultural resources element. We did take quite a bit of time with this, and we tried to, we really tried to put things in here that we thought were good and that we tapped into the DuPont Historical Society about it. I know that both chapter 5 and chapter 6 aren't good enough, because you're never going to be quite there. But again, those were things that we could probably work on with more time and focus. The chapter 6 in the historic and cultural resources element, it talks about the history of the city, outlines our concepts for cultural resources. And we really tried to add stuff in this chapter that didn't exist to take a baby step in terms of adding policies that show our intent is really to be able to identify those. We don't have any criteria or any way to really identify and designate our cultural and historical assets. And also to be able to capitalize on those, leverage them, if you will, maybe education or tourism opportunities. So we did put goals and policies in there, which we'd heard were something that, it's a start to move in the right direction. Chapter 7, Parks and Recreation, that element is really just, it incorporates by reference the PROST plan that you've already passed. So the PROST plan itself satisfies the GMA requirements of having the inventory and all these things, and the 6-year capital improvement program for projects with the funding. That's all there. It's incorporated in this plan for you to be compliant with the GMA. And then the other thing that we did, because the PROST plan it had implementation, it's not supposed to be a policy document necessarily. We put some goals and policies that were consistent with that PROST plan in this chapter. Chapter 8, we spent a lot of time on the housing element because that's where a lot of the legislative changes took place. The household characteristics, all the age, what do our householders look like? What is our share of the housing targets, and analyzing all of that. So the goals and policies are really being able to preserve what we have, improve, and then the development of new housing. So it's kind of looking at all those things as tools to, you don't want to lose housing stock if you can help it. And, we're in this city, we have housing stock that's now 25, 30 years old. A lot of it, like most of it. So we want to look at kind of trying to guide the document in terms of what can be done on the preservation side to keep that housing stock viable and not lose it. And then the alignment of the legislative goals. Okay. Next, housing capacity. This is where we're showing you again these the capacity to meet this the income band targets. We already spoke about that. Then probably the most exciting chapter in the whole plan is chapter 9, the transportation elements.
So this is one thing.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Bar has been set high for you. So,
Well, thank you. So we touched on this briefly at the Mount Road study session. But the transportation element is essentially, it's built on an analytical foundation. And so what we do is we analyze the existing conditions, develop trial forecasts for 2045, and then we try to understand, try to compare them with best practices in terms of standards. And then we see what's missing, and then we make recommendations in terms of projects as well as policies. So that's the standard method of doing the TE. But additionally, what you'll find here is there's, like Barbara mentioned, there's a lot of legislative changes. And so this chapter touches on that, as well as one of the things that we've done that's different from previous iterations is we've analyzed each mode individually and in greater detail than we usually do. So you'll find that in this plan, it's not just a focus on the automobile, but you also have pedestrian, bicycle, freight, and focus on safety. Next slide, please. So we just pulled some of the key goals, the goals and policies, just like all the other chapters, but we pulled some of the key goals out. And some of these are especially ones that the Planning Commission had debated on. These are the ones that likely on the horizon will prove to be very important given the prevailing conditions. One being this coordination with regional partners is going to ever increase. It's going to be important in the next 10 years, just as I-5's congestion and also so many different projects are being implemented nearby. But additionally, another element is with the city's growth, as we've seen in land use component, it's important to talk to intercity transit as well as PS Transit, given the city's location, to make sure that the city is factored in its long-range plans. I can speak for PS Transit because I worked on the project and DuPont's definitely been considered. But additionally, it's important that intercity considers the city as well because it's at the cusp. As the infrastructure ages, we want to make sure that the existing transportation system is maintained, as well as making sure we're expanding the system wherever the gaps that we find. Especially what we found is that pedestrian bicycle gaps aren't as many as we would expect. But there is the possibility to have a really good system in 2045 with the required financial investments. And another major one is high-speed rail services. And this is a project that's continuing, and as the TDLE extends, as well as improvements to sound, this is something that needs to be considered as well. Next slide. So the TE, this is just a synopsis of the major goals and policies. So we bracketed them into 4 policies, focusing first on the strategy of making sure we efficiently use the resources. And then the where of, and this is something that Barbara mentioned, all the chapters are interlined. So we'll want to make sure that when we talk about the land use strategy, we talk about transportation, but additionally, when we talk about transportation, we make sure it matches the land use policy. And then regional collaboration is important, and that defines the who component, but additionally, we want to make sure that the what component is considered, which is to make sure that all the modes are amply covered. Next slide, please. So in terms of what we're proposing, this is what we're finding, which is we need about 28 vehicular projects. We need about 9 pedestrian projects to meet the standards or the guidelines that we've studied. And we need about 6 bike projects. And bike projects are fewer in number because we largely look at the arterial network. There's generally no trouble with the residential streets. So we look at where the deficiencies are in 2045, make sure that we're measuring them right, and then we make sure that we ask what kind of facility needs to be put in there. Next slide, please. Yeah. And
It's just that big old map.
that map, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's 20 years, a lot of projects, and you can see much of the investment is in the Old Fort Lake area. Everywhere else, it's more targeted improvements and interventions. And much of that is going to be developer funded. So in terms of the whole city, city funds towards improvements are going to be much fewer in number. And that's where the TIF comes in. And that, yep, brings us to chapter.
Thank you. Did anyone have questions for Siddharth?
I would turn your,
No, not about transportation. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to economic development. So have you gotten any feedback from the chamber about some of those areas? They're fulfilling some of those, but I don't know if you've gotten the current update. Just so that, just like we have collaboration with the Historical Society, we have another entity that's doing that work too.
Yeah, exactly. We did collaborate with the chamber and asked them to read and provide some suggestions, some input, which they did. Now, I understand that they have continued to work on it, and I think that's great. I think that we may not have enough time for them to come in at this point.
Yeah, that's what I
But that we
yeah.
would be able to continue to collaborate, and if they come in and they've made some additional improvements to this goals and policies of that chapter, then that would be something we'd take through the planning commission. next year.
Yeah, exactly. Like I knew those over the years since we're
Mhm.
kind of we've already that ship has sailed right now with what we've been
Yeah.
doing. I'm just hoping that the chamber will be able to be sustained because it's been growing. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So then the last chapter of the plan is 10, capital facilities and utilities is also a pretty big chapter because it has, there's a lot in there between our capital facilities, not just those, and utilities, not just those that the city owns and operates, but any service provider to the residents here. You have to speak about that and have the inventory of what you have, who owns it, the locations of those, and then providing the goals and policies. Now, we don't control those other agencies in terms of the provision, but we are able to speak to them about their planning and incorporate their planning. For example, Pierce County Sewer does a long-range plan. And so, that's just something that is part of this analysis, but we really, in our own capacity or ability for those services that we control, we have included a 6-year plan for the improvements to finance, which is required to make sure that the projected growth, it's identified what we need, what are the projects that we need for growth, and what are the sources of funds that we may be able to use for that. So that 6-year plan is embedded in this chapter. In fact, the 6-year plan for capital facilities and utilities and parks and transportation are all embedded in this because that's a Growth Management Act requirement. Later on, the next discussion that we have, we look at the long-range side of it. So the 6 year is considered, the short-range plan where you actually have things that need to be fixed within 6 years, and that's not a lot of time to pay for some of these things, as you know. But then you also want to, as a good practice, you do a longer look. 10 years is encouraged. Some people go 15, 20 in terms of the capital facility planning itself. So identifying all of these projects over time and anticipating that things are going to need to be replaced or fixed or something. Or you might even, in the case of city growth, the administration itself may need to grow more people to take care of things, more space to house those people to take care of things, that sort of thing. So the policy direction that we took in all of this, though, is to strengthen the goals and policies around ensuring that the growth pays for itself, when it is new growth that's impacting the provision of service, those level of service standards to fall, then that is the gap that must be paid for by the developer. But where we know we have existing deficiencies, because our own system is currently aging, that those projects and budgeting for those needs of the residents are on the city. So that's what that chapter is doing, and that pretty much wraps it up in terms of an overview. So we are, like I said, Planning Commission had their hearing. We took testimony. We'll come back and deliberate. The staff report is recommending to them that we went through there's a decisional criteria in the DuPont Municipal Code where we look at these things, and we have findings in the staff report that they comply with the DMC. And so I didn't go into all that, but that's part of the staff report. So the conclusion is that we are complying with our own DMC code for updating or amending our comprehensive plan. And these amendments are also compliant with the state legislative, with the statute. So that's where we end this tonight. I entertain any further questions if you have them.
I have one more. It was either on a chart in here or it was on a chart for our next conversation about water. And I think it was about $2 million that was needed for a new well in the Old Fort Lake.
We don't need a new well. That is the next discussion. So yeah, we don't need a new well for the Old Fort Lake. We are going to need storage capacity.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's on us. It's not on the developer.
no, that could be on the developer.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Director Kincaid? Well, thank you, Barb. We're going to be discussing this more and more as we go
More and
along.
more.
So
Yeah.
this is the overview of the whole comprehensive plan, and we'll get into more nitty-gritty later on.
That's right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Siddharth.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, tonight we have a couple of study sessions. The first one's item 5.1, the water and stormwater utility rate study. And we have Gus Lim with us again tonight to cover that. So
Yes. We were talking.
Good evening. Let's see, what we have for you is a follow-up from our last study session. And what's different from our last study session? Our last study session, well, there was a lot of background. How do we calculate the system development charge? That type of thing. In this one, we actually looked at roughly, I want to say, we looked at 6 scenarios to talk about differing utility rates, both stormwater and water. We also I put together something that you're going to see repeating in the next session, which is a capital facilities plan. So we put in there beyond just the 5-year backlog of projects. It's actually 15 years of projects that are in there from that point. So those are the 2 major changes. And then in those scenarios, once we get to those tables, I'll give you an orientation because it's we're doing colors and different tables, and I'll need to give you all an orientation once we get to that point then. So With me today is Dominic Miller from Gray and Osborne. We can kick it off here and then and have discussions. Feel free to ask questions along the way as we go. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Gus. Councilmember Gassick, you weren't here last time, but I think from the last time we did a utility rate study, I think you're probably the only one who was there at those ones. So maybe if you remember. Yes, as Gus discussed, you know, the focus of this presentation is really on the monthly rates for both water and stormwater. I think we kind of got in on the system development charges, what they are, who pays for them, what they mean. There's a maximum allowable. So we think we came to a rough head nod consensus at this table here on that. So we wanted to focus. And we also heard that, boy, those are some significant rate increases. And so we wanted to give you all options. We also had a discussion about, hey, you know, these capital improvement projects aren't it's not building an empire for Gus. It's you have infrastructure that, you know, if you wait till it completely crumbles apart, you'll never be able to afford to replace it. So there's a sweet spot. You have to look at replacing it. You have to look at delivering the services to your citizens. And I think both Keith and Gordon talked about your responsibility as a city to provide safe, clean water on your water utility, and on the stormwater, same thing, taking away, you know, people think, oh, it just rains, it just goes in the sound. Well, there's a lot more to it. You know, you collect, you detain, you treat, you go through outfalls, you have ecology regulations on water, you have health regulations. And I think, as Gordon, Keith, and Gus all said last time, this isn't to scare you guys. It's just that, hey, there is a responsibility associated with, so it's, and part of this coming back is showing, hey, these are all the planned improvements. These are studied, these are developed projects. These are what we think are cost-effective projects to upgrade your infrastructure. And these are staff recommendations to continue to run your utilities well. Which the fact is you do a good job of running your utilities. You have a good staff. You have qualified operators. You have knowledgeable staff that are able to do it, but there's still, you know, projects to be completed. So the next slide is just a recap that it is just looking back at kind of the history from 2018 through 2025 that shows there have been minimal rate increases over the last there's 7 years here, or I guess.
Could I ask a question about this chart? And I'm sorry if I'm naive about this, but I kind of drew a line. You know, 2018, definitely 2019 to 2021. We talked about this. Might have been impacted by COVID, right? Like not wanting increases or something having to do with that. But then I noticed it was kind of on a trajectory of 2%. I mean, you know, incremental increases. Then from 22 to 25, no increases. What stopped the seems like pretty logical stair stepping of increases to the point we are now, where we're talking about making up for those maybe 5 years? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
What happened in between
Councilmember
those?
Walton. So what I can tell you is what happened in history. So late 2017, 2018 was the last time we actually did the utility rate study. And that essentially covered from 2018 to 2023. What you see there from 2018 to 2023 was that rate study. And we did that in 2000. This is before COVID happened. And that's what the look was. And then since then, since 2023, we have not made any changes to it. Ideally, the city should have done a rate study in 2023 and move forward with that. And the reason why it's 0% is we have not taken action And that would have been the ideal time, is to take action in 2023 or earlier. But the realities of it, when COVID hit, I mean, we were all reeling. And the utility rate was essentially was the punching bag for everyone, meaning it took the hits. And then now we had to see, okay, where do we go from there? So that's what the history is, good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, we've only done that study at that point in time, and we probably should have done something 2023. I think 2022 we're still reeling from COVID, so I suspect focus was on other things at that point.
I appreciate
Okay.
that answer. Thank
Okay.
you for the honesty.
Okay, the next 3 slides are stormwater capital improvement projects in 5-year increments. So one of the things that is significant in the time frame of 2026 to 2030, the first 5-year increment, is the project we talked about, which is the decant and wash rack facility, which we have split over 3 projects that add up to $2.75 million. They're starting with the $2 million project, then, paving and decking the yard, and then getting some canopies for the spoils pile. So that's your kind of big hitter, the big project that we discussed. And when we look at the rate alternatives, we looked at what it means to move that project around. It's a big enough project that it's not going to be designed and constructed in the same calendar year. It's kind of too big a project. So it's a matter of initiating design maybe in 1 year and building the next year in rough terms. It's more like an 18-month project than a 12-month or a 24-month project. But when we were going through some alternatives, what we're finding is if you push it out by itself, it actually is worse, because the anticipated inflation of construction costs is outpacing your revenue you're coming in. So, when you're starting with a fairly healthy balance, which you are in stormwater, it actually makes more sense to start your bigger project as soon as you can, because it's not getting cheaper in the future. So it's just it makes some sense. But when I was filling with the model, I said, oh, well, we can delay it. Now that's different than when we talk about the water project. If you take all the projects and delay them a year, yes, that helps from a rate standpoint, but doesn't help you that you're kicking the can on every single piece of your infrastructure. So anyway, the second 5-year kind of the big hitter there are the top 2 projects at $500,000 a piece, which is those are liners. A lot of your ponds have 2 cells. You have what's a wet cell, which is where the treatment happens, which is lined, and then you have the infiltration cell, which the water flows over and goes down into the ground into wonderful gravels here. And then there's a couple other $500,000 projects that are down later on that list. And then the last 5-year totals to about $3 million. So the projects are tapering down in terms of the first 5-year increment, 4.1 million, the next one, 3.3, and the final one, 3.0. So there is a kind of addressing some of the big ones. Once that decant wash rack facility is in, that's not one that's recurring, that one that you have, and that's a benefit to you moving forward in that regard. So this is where we get into
I think there's an error.
go ahead. Is there an error?
Yeah. If you look at the 2036 to 2041.
Uh-huh,
And if you total those projects at the bottom, it says 3,022,000.
yep.
But if you add those numbers up, it's nowhere near 3,022,000.
Yes, it couldn't be.
So it's, what you do is you use, if it's the
Annual.
first one, if
Okay.
there's 3 years, you would do 3 times.
Got it.
3 times the number given.
Correct. So
Oh,
that,
okay,
sorry
thank
for
you.
the confusion there, that,
Okay.
and it is that way on the previous
Right,
ones as
yeah.
well. And I think on water, we have one where it says wells 1, Bell Hill wells 1, 2, and 3, and they're each 362 or something. So that's why the math is like that. So we weren't repeating it. So that's how you did the math, right, Gus? On the ones you added?
Correct. And otherwise, it will look like the eye chart that we're going to have in the next session, which is a capital facilities plan, which is multiple pages. I try to get these crammed in so it's like visually attractive, at least as slides in here.
Okay,
All right.
now come the colors.
We need to give an orientation on this first. You want to do it, Dom? You want me to do it?
Sure. So we tried to keep this consistent between the stormwater and the water so that, you know, what the scenarios mean are what they are. The first one on each one is, the orange is literally what we presented on October 28th. That was the orange. That was annual increase on storm. And then what we're talking about here is what the annual increase is, what the fund balance is at the end of each year. And then we have what the increase in the rate is in terms of a dollar value. So you can see both the percent and the dollar value. The next color, green, is corrections made after the workshop that keep the same annual rate increases, but there were corrections made that essentially worked in your favor. There were some things, frankly, I found in the rate model, we had a couple things in different years that I thought on the stormwater side. So green is, you can tell the substantial difference is in the lowest balance year, which is 2028, where the orange, it dips down to 588,000 in the fund, and the green, it dips down to 622. So that's the main difference. And I will tell you, green in each phase is, or in each, the storm and the water is what we're recommending as a staff that you consider for your rate increases. So blue is a,
Just a second, Dom.
Sure.
Just one thing to highlight in green in 2027, you notice that end fund balance is 835. One of the biggest changes was we had the decamp facility and the supporting projects spread between 2027, 2028. This one essentially absorbs it all in 2027. So that's one of the big chunks as far as when we're doing this analysis and from there. So it is the end result, all the same 5-year capital projects, the same percentage, but we corrected the 2027 timeframe then. Okay, all right, go ahead, Tom.
and then scenario 3 in the blue was moving it a little earlier for the decamp project, but we also dropped down the rates by 1% in each of the years. So the green is 55544 and the blue is 44433. So it's 1% less of an increase in each of the year. That's the major.
And then the reason for why there's a change in blue, not just because we like, reducing something by 1%, it's more of the concept of what is my true floor. So, and this would be similar to, let's say you and I are driving my car, and at a certain point, I start getting nervous on how much the fuel tank gets to. For reference, when I get nervous about a quarter tank and I got to go fill it up from there. So that's another way of looking at it is how low can we take the end fund balance before we really need to do something about it? And the general idea is $500,000 is that one unscheduled event that we have to do something. And that, what does that mean? It could mean a catch basin and a storm pipe get clogged up and we got to dig it out and redo it. It could mean one of our storm ponds, one of the walls, the earthen walls collapses. So we got to rebuild it off to one side. So those are examples of what would that $500,000 translate into? But so that essentially created a floor that we can actually drive towards in this scenario. And then similarly, when we get to the water side, that floor identified as $1 million because what can go wrong will actually cost us more. So for example, do we lose well and pump motors inside of one of our wells? Do we actually have some pumps go bad on us? Do we have a standby generator that essentially failed ahead of its replacement? So that's what you'll see in here in both scenarios. The blue is I created a floor that we can drive towards. Then that led to the reduced rate percentage from there. Yeah. Okay.
Gus, that year 2028 is the lowest one on both those scenarios. My question would be, is the 500 and some thousand or the 600 and some thousand, would you consider that an adequate floor, or we really need to be higher there?
Yeah, Mayor, that's a good question. It's like how much risk do you want to take on? And I had to quantify this because it really comes back to, how much risk do we want to take on? But it really can come back to how can I define one unscheduled event that we have to take action on that we have not scheduled for? And that was, we're gonna take a little bit of risk because potentially do we have two unscheduled events that could happen? This is life. Anything can happen. But this is me trying to figure out, okay, what is a risk level I think is there and adequate for us to move forward on. Ideally, I would like not to put that floor. I mean, but I also have to drive to a certain point of, hey, the earlier numbers that we showed were not making people comfortable. So then I had to come up with something so we can go look at this. So that long response, Mayor, but it comes back to we can only have one unscheduled event that we didn't plan for. And that's what it essentially drives into.
Yeah, but I also noted in the breakdown here, we were concerned about percentages and stuff like that, but really in dollar figures, you got 64 cents, 84 cents. Each year is less than $1. So it doesn't seem to be an onerous amount over the next 5 years.
Right. For the stormwater, I think I added up the numbers. For yellow and green, it's $4.03. For the blue, it's $3.08. And we're going to get to the other ones in the back. There's also $3.08 for the stormwater rate.
For the whole period.
In total from 2025 to 2030.
Yeah, so it's well less than $1 each year.
Yeah.
And something to think about on the stormwater side. I mean, Gus talked about the type of emergency it can be. I mean, inevitably, it's raining. It's been raining. It's at night. A culvert plugs. It could be the box culvert across Center Drive that's Squatchie Creek. Something plugs in there, hits it, you get a road washout. That's not city crew going and fixing it. That's getting a contractor in here, big equipment, working at night. They're working overtime. They could be working a week straight. That bill, tick, 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 you know, you can get to 500,000. I mean, I can give you a scenario where you can hit 500,000 and that's a major, you know, event. He talks about the water side that, well, when you're talking about that, that's a lot of equipment and labor and some materials. But when you're talking about mechanical equipment, you're talking about big pumps, big generator, you know, that's, yes, there's labor involved, but that's also, you know, emergency shipping from wherever to get pumps or rent equipment, rent generator, rent that. And that can, you know, tick up. Now, you know, I'm like, Gus, do I sleep better at night on the storm fund if I know that there's 750,000 in there instead of 500? Well, yeah, but you know, that still gets us kind of in the ballpark of what is, you know, what is there. Because the other thing you got to think about the timing, it's okay. Well, it dipped down to there the 1 year, we're getting it back up. So you would have to have a confluence of both time and balance. The minimum balance is when your emergency happens, which can happen, but it's not like we're dipping down to a minimum balance and then flatlining it. It dips,
back
but
up.
we're showing them coming back. So again, it's risk. You know, Keith can probably talk to that as well. It's your tolerance for risk, and being responsible on you know, trying to balance that. So you guys have the hard decisions, but we're trying to present you the info. So, and then the magenta, yellow, and dark orange, red, salmon. These are scenarios that we're not recommending. The magenta one isn't too bad. It's more a comparison between 4 and 3, and that's just some sensitivity of delaying that big project. When you slide it out, that just shows if you slide it out, it actually hurts your balances because the project gets more expensive if you delay it. But the magenta and blue for stormwater, it's the same rate increases. And then the scenario 5 is delaying it even further out to 2028, and that shows it dipping below the 500,000. And then the final one, the salmon one, is the do nothing scenario. If you just keep on doing what you did in the last 5 years with no increases, it dips down and gets pretty low. So we definitely aren't recommending that. But in this case, scenarios 3, 4, and 5 all have the same rate increases. We're just sliding that decant project around. And so there's a sensitivity that, you know, the more you delay it, that, you know, that it gets more expensive, or we're projecting it to be more expensive. So in the case of, we're still, you know, recommending the green was our recommendation, but we thought we'd show these alternatives that are food for thought, so you guys can see what that piece is. Are there
Yeah,
questions on
I do.
before we?
Yes.
You
Okay.
You want bigger rate increases?
Yeah. I wouldn't plan that way. Okay. First, thanks for coming back with the different scenarios. Greatly appreciate the work. You know, I want to assure everyone out there, I think everyone at this council wants to make sure that we have good water, but we also have to look at how can we do it and stay affordable. It might only be some cents less than $1 here. The other rates, when we get to the other side, when staff comes back in other areas and we know they're coming for more money, we have to collaboratively look at it. And there's only so much room in that one pocketbook or one checking account that a family has. Scenario 3, 4, 5, I appreciate it because it may not sound like much, but when you put it all together, really under scenario 2, it's 5 years from now, rates would be 25.3% higher than they're right now. Under the other scenarios, it'd be 19.35. And I think collectively, you have to look at percentages. So what's the right one? And here's where my questions are going to come from. First, the decant facility right now, and Gus, thanks for the tour. I really appreciate it. So, the tough decisions, the decant facility right now, we're contracting that. Is that correct? Okay.
Absolutely.
yeah.
That has to be a contracted out project just because of the dollar value.
Right. So, the time frame. This is a $2 million project. Time frame. I think you said, and I don't want to misstate, but it's like every 4 years we have to do a major project, about 400,000. In today's dollars, about 100,000 a year is what your contract's for.
Yes. So that was in relationship to one of the functions of the decant facility was when we use our street sweeper, pick up leaves and other debris, we can dump it into that and then essentially have some form of treatment in there, as well as on top of that, have treatment within the yard because everything is just bare earth over there. In comparison to that is when we're actually going out and doing the catch basin cleaning, and what we're forecasting is that catch basin cleaning is going to be $450,000 each time we have to do that, whether that's 2 years or 3 years for there.
But it looks like on the list, if I read it wrong, we still have money programmed for the catch basin, even with the decant facility, it's in that price range.
Yes, I put it at the higher dollar value.
Yeah, so I mean, that cost is still going to be there. So a couple of thoughts, what is the payoff in time to continue with the contract? It's the only project on the list that I've got a question about. I mean, I want to clarify, if you look down there, it's the only one. And and I'm not quite convinced, me personally, that the payoff is there. Or the other one that was mentioned is that you could go for a grant for it. So if we can kind of shift it around and try for the grant first, before we ask our taxpayers to pay the whole thing. Sometimes with the grant, we have to pay for part of it. So I think until we totally rule out if we're going to be approved or not for a grant, or rule out where the payoff is, sometimes it's great to do things internally, and sometimes it becomes more expensive. And I just want us to be cautious and careful on that. So with that in mind, if we did the decant facility and then we did the other things, would there be other incidental expenses like different vehicles that we have to get? With the catch basin, that's part of the contract. We don't have the equipment that could pull that out, do we, or do we?
Well, if we have a decant facility and the hard deck that's back in that Levier's Public Works yard, that 450 that identified in there could go down to $200,000 or $100,000 each year. We used to do the decanting, believe it or not, inside one of our storm ponds, but now process-wise, that is now no longer a best management practice.
Totally understand and totally agree. I want to clarify. So thoughts here. Again, thanks for bringing the proposals. My question is on the decant, can we go out and try to get the grant first? And that might mean shifting it around a bit. And just one of the things that we talked about in our ad hoc with the legislative is in reference to the pavement area, we might be able to reduce that too, even though having it still on the list is to consider when we do our legislative priorities. If we have something in our legislative priorities that very specifically deals with stormwater, that will help keep our, should it be approved, help keep the rates down. If we go with the lower 4433, whatever it is, and we get and we don't get the money, we would still, when I say don't get the money, I'm referring to the potential legislative priorities. We would still have it built in where we could do the pavement. We could do all these things. We could do the canopy. The funds would be there on a slightly different schedule. So I would ask that we consider some flexibility on that and realize that we haven't explored all options. And if we went with the 4-4, is it 4-4-4-3-3?
Yes.
Okay. If we went with that and looked at, can we still potentially go after Department of Ecology grant for the decant facility, even if it has to be shifted a bit. And then also look at, when we discuss our legislative priorities, if we can potentially pull off something there. But those are my initial thoughts. Looking forward to hearing more.
I hear you on the grant piece. Love getting, it makes me very nervous to have safety issues relying on grants. Not that it's not a great source, but grants are hard to get sometimes. I don't anticipate the state having more than less. So in an ideal world, that would work. But worst case scenario, we don't get it. It's, to rely on grants to fund things that are really fundamental to safety and health and all of that just makes me nervous. But this makes all of us nervous at another level. Does that make sense?
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, please,
Okay.
please. Yeah.
That's why I'm specifically talking about the decant facility.
Yeah,
It's the one thing that we can continue to do under a contract.
Yes.
Safety is number one. Okay. So we could still do it. We just have to budget it in as a.
So it would be, from your mind, specifically targeting that particular
I'm
project.
particularly trying, where can we get a little wiggle room where we still meet these
No, I
requirements?
appreciate that.
But
Yeah,
thanks for the
thank you.
question.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Winkler, I need to emphasize something associated with the decant facility. I think what you saw in our yard, it's all bare earth. And when we run equipment over there, when we have petroleum oil lubricants leaking from our equipment, it's going on bare earth, and then the Edmonds Marsh is right there. So the big thing about this project is it's all for the most part underground. It is similar to the parking lot outside. What we don't see is all the catch basins and piping that's taken it to a stormwater facility just over there by the across the street from the fire department. So my concern is while we can connect to the leaf pickup and the catch basin cleanup, we are still residing in a situation where I am concerned we're going to get a notice of violation, and that will be $10,000 a day. This has been this ugly little thing that I've been trying to correct for a while here, and I am concerned that if we don't show progress, we will probably have the reverse of a grant that's going to be happening on this thing. So I just want to make sure that everyone clearly understands this is not just about the decant facility, but is about the underground piping and the stormwater collection inside that yard, because it is bare earth for the most part from there. So I just want to make sure we are all seeing the same picture here. Yeah.
Well, I want to clarify the other projects, the bare earth, and I appreciate the tour. I understand, I support the canopy over there, and I'm just saying it's my understanding a lot of cities contract for the decant facility. It's a major ticket item. It's the biggest ticket item. There are some potential grants. Now, if I'm wrong about that, I'm just saying, if you're saying that if we continue with the contract, if we did everything else, but if we didn't do the decant and we continue with the contract, you're saying we're potentially violating.
I think that's a clear way of saying it, and I think staff has a real concern, and Department of Ecology has a eye on us and is really holding us accountable and setting expectations. So I think I want to make it clear, and Gus is, I'll just try to be as clear as I can. It is taking on an enormous risk if we don't move forward with what we propose.
And the vehicle washes, there are regulatory requirements, and the vehicle washes, it sounds insignificant. Oh, you just wash your car. Well, ecology requirements are, if you are washing municipal vehicles, what comes off of those vehicles has to go through an oil water separator. And it doesn't. It doesn't right now. So that's a piece that it's a little hard for ecology to follow around your vehicle, see how you wash them. Technically, you're not in compliance. What Gus is talking about, that yard, what hits it, technically you're not in compliance. The part about covering those spoil piles, they're supposed to be covered. So there's a number of things that no one thing is so egregious, but when ecology is, you've got a pattern that, well, we don't quite meet it here. We don't quite meet it here. We don't quite meet it here. There's risk involved. Even the contracting part where you go and factor everything around. The city is at the whim of other places jacking up their rates to dispose of the material. They could say, we're not taking it anymore. We're gonna charge 2x to get rid of because it's not just liquid. It's the grit and soil material. It's got petroleums, oils, lubricants, everything that comes off the bottom of semi trucks. You guys may notice you have some truck traffic that comes from a couple places up here. It all hits. And if you have your own facility, you can kind of control your own destiny. If you keep contracting out, I realize every city doesn't have a decant facility, but you know, there's risk there. It's, you know, I know it's sewer and I work in sewer in other cities. There's a real worry about like septic haulers. They're like, oh, we'll just take it down to that plant. Well, what happens when they say 2x? We raised our prices to dispose of it. On stormwater, it can happen. Now, again, there is a possibility Ecology has grants specifically for decant facilities. They have a bunch of hoops you got to jump through on how you do your pre-design report, which we've been, I swear, beta testing for them. But there would certainly be the opportunity to pursue that. I think that's certainly the responsible thing to do. Gus and I are a little gun shy on ecology stormwater grants because we had a fairly negative experience previously, but that negative experience, well, you know, those are strings attached to money.
Well, the slightly lower rates still, as you presented, still has the decant facility in there.
Right.
All right, so it's still there. So I'm comfortable with, and it gives you the opportunity, maybe, you know, you phase it, suggestion, so where you do the design, so you go in for the grant, and then we'll see if we get it or not. But the way I'm looking at the numbers, you potentially, it might drop down to this floor. I think that was the term you described, the floor, and I understand what you're saying, but it does come back quickly, and at least we're trying for the grant. Okay, but I've talked enough.
Yeah, I think a 2-track facility would be, scenario would be good where we move forward with the decant, but also look for the grants, right?
Well, the way you've got it with the 44433, that there is that possibility. Your ceiling's just going, I mean, your floor is just going to go lower. That's all it's going to do is go lower. But you have the opportunity to do the design, go for the grant. And at least we did everything possible for our citizens to assist them with that process. And that's, so to answer your question, the lower rates give you that possibility. But it might just get your floor lower if we don't get the grant. If we get the grant, the floor won't go so low.
Right.
All right.
Right.
So might flush out some of the questions I was going to have too, but so all of a sudden so I know we've never had a decant facility before, but what has changed? I mean, did we get inspected? And so when did that,
So a previous permit for stormwater, I want to say that ended in 2023 or 24, that there are some best management practices in there. When we changed over to the new permit, that best management practice took away our ability to essentially decant into our own stormwater facilities. So now the best management practices in our present permit, the one we are in right now, first has us going to what we're doing now, going to a place that has a decant facility. We're actually taking that discharged stormwater in over at the Port of Tacoma. And just dropping it over there. And we have the ability to actually do what we used to do before, but we have to exhaust all the other options. And-
Are you saying it's a fair assessment that inspection was a warning to the city?
No, a couple things happened. The permit changed. So when we went to the new permit, that practice of decanting into our own storm pounds was no longer a preferred method of doing it.
Okay.
The second time, we did have a notice of violation, but that was associated to how we report things. And how do we count things, and how often do we do inspections on our catch basins and what have you. So we've replied this year for that 2024 notice of violation. I think we're in the clear, but let me just say we're still in the doghouse, right? We're a target at this point.
Gus, did you say $10,000 a day could be a potential fine, giving these different scenarios?
Yeah, that's.
Did I get that 10,000
Yeah,
a
so
day?
with ecology, they say, you know, like to wave a heavy stick, but I always hear it from different people. It is they have, by law, they have the
Yeah.
ability to issue up to $10,000 a day
Right.
for every day. Now, granted, I mean, is that Exxon Valdez or me spilling a little bit of oil in the parking lot? I mean, there's some granularity, but that amount exists.
No, and I appreciate in plan for kind of the worst case scenario.
I think.
So you're not
Gordon's
surprised by
sitting
that.
here. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Gordon.
council member, I can answer some of
I-
those questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so the stormwater, the municipal stormwater permit, there's one for Western Washington, there's one for Eastern Washington. We're in the Western Washington one. So it's a broad permit, meaning that it's not like an individualized permit to each city, right? Every city in Western Washington falls under the same permit. And you can find online, it's 27 pages long with hundreds of appendices. It's a very substantial document. It gets renewed every 4 or 5 years, something like that. And then they go through and they oftentimes will make significant modifications based on what in the term is best practices or best management practices, which is essentially what the scientific evidence leads ecology to determine is the best way to manage stormwater. And that does change over the years. And that's what Gus was talking about. So in addition to all the terms we have to meet under the stormwater permit, it will change from time to time. And you're correct, a violation of the permit, you'll be fined per day, per violation, up to $10,000. Now, the only thing we have going for us is that the Department of Ecology also has a mandate that they primarily help permittees to meet the permit conditions before they go to violation. So we did receive an actual notice of violation. Usually you receive sort of a warning first, and then you got to respond to that. And if you don't respond efficiently or a way they like, then you get a notice of violation. At that point, you basically have an option to work with ecology to remedy the violation prior to them actually imposing the fine, or they can just impose the fine at that time, at which point I would probably appeal that notice to the Pollution Control Hearing Board. But yeah, that's sort of the long and the short of it. And it is, they wield a lot of authority over this area of the city, and they can, and there are many requirements we have to meet, and any one of them can result in a fine. Yes.
No, thank you. That was very helpful. So,
One other thing that can happen is, and this we see more on wastewater treatment plants that violate their discharge permit. There are third parties that follow these violations around, and you are open to a third party lawsuit potentially because these are public record. You get a violation. It happens a lot with sewer treatment plants. I've seen it, but there's nothing preventing third parties from coming after stormwater violations. Yeah.
Gordon, could you explain what that would look like?
Yeah, sure. So what he's 100% correct. So there's a provision in multiple laws, primarily the Clean Water Act, or both federal and state Clean Water Act, that provides a avenue for private parties to sue any sort of private or public entity that engages in any kind of pollution, right? And this was developed many, many years ago, and it was essentially a way in which a private party could file a lawsuit if they felt that the agency responsible for maintaining that, so whether maybe the Department of Health, but usually the Department of Ecology in Washington State,
failed to enforce efficiently or failed to enforce at all, or even if the Department of Ecology looks at something and says, well, we're not going to issue a violation or we think it's fine, they can still file a lawsuit, right? Now, what they have to do is they have to find an injured party. It can't just be, they're not a regulatory body, they're still a third party. So what typically happens is they find like a local environmental group or a land trust or a water trust, and they take them on as a client, and then they file suit against the agency on their behalf for any sort of damage or pollution done to the water body or the trust land, or sometimes even private land. I handled one of these cases myself many years ago when I worked for the Department of Ecology. A third party sued both the outside plaintiff as well as the department for discharge of turbided water and metals into the Duwamish River by a recycling plant, and they were representing the Duwamish, like a private Duwamish environmental group. So, yeah.
So you're saying they would sue the Department of Ecology and a city as well?
Well, in this case, they sued a private entity, but they could sue a city as well. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So a couple of questions. So I'm all for putting in the paving the canopies. And from what I understand, that will stop the leakage of stuff going into our wetlands. And it'll help dry out some of our leaves, our wet stuff. But I do have to question, there are no cities, there's I think one city in Western Washington, Kirkland, that has a decant facility. Counties have them, but only Kirkland. And I do have to question, why does Little DuPont need a $2 million decant facility when none of these other people have, or cities have them, and when we can still transport what we need to transport to the Port of Tacoma? To me, $2 million is a lot of money for a city of our size when no other city other than Kirkland has this.
I know Milton has one because we
Port Angeles
designed it for
does.
them, and I thought Puyallup and Sumner both did. Bigger cities, granted, but
Not in my research.
no.
But I could be wrong.
I know Pullman has one. That's on the east side because we've worked on that one as well. That's not. quite
I'm going to
the
get him a
main-
shirt to change this right here.
Well.
Oh,
Yeah.
But and
No,
I know
not
we have the ability to wash a car. I think it's one at a time in our facility over here. And so wouldn't the concrete pads and the covering of it get us a long way?
I don't disagree with you. I mean, one of the most egregious things is just the bare earth at that location. However, if we have the ability to be more self-sufficient and be more resilient, it's my opinion that we should take that. I am at the mercy's edge of what will a decant facility charge us from there. So, and I'm getting feedback from our contractors when we're doing this citywide catch basin cleaning that if they get to the Port of Tacoma after 3, they're out of luck. Their line is too long for them to actually decant over there. So that's one of the problems. Similarly, let me correlate this to brine spraying and putting anti-ice on our streets. We've had a great relationship with Pierce County. We've been able to receive and store brine from them. But when it comes to the most extreme storms, they are busy with their own streets. We've had to go to East County to go pick that up, but we don't have the adequate vessel, so it's a small amount. So I bought a little brine maker. We're gonna make our own brine, and well, it's more than little. I mean, we're gonna make we're gonna make at least 500-gallon containment at a time each time we settle. But it goes back to can we be resilient? Can we do this on our own without having to rely on others? And the fact that because we're doing it this year to going to an actual proper decant facility, and the feedback I'm getting from the contractors is hey, not only is the distance from travel from here to the Port of Tacoma, granted we're in the same county, is they're spending half the time on I-5 and waiting in line than actually being inside our city and actually factoring out those catch basins at that point. So it goes back to, can I live without? Absolutely. I can live without with a lot of things. As you know, my family could tell me, it's like, hey, just feed me a couple things and I can live. But there are certain things where, okay, I need to be better than Gus Lim, the knuckle dragger caveman, right? I mean, I have to. So this is our opportunity. We have the funds there, and this is the opportunity where we can actually make ourselves as the example from there. Now, I'm not going to say we're going to bankrupt all the other cities, and because we have this product, but it becomes a capability. I mean, for example, at one point we didn't have a fueling station here. Yeah.
Would this be an opportunity for us to make money? Could Stilla come bring their stuff? Could University Place and Lakewood bring their stuff to us so we could charge them?
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
I got to figure out how do I weigh / funnel quantity wise get that in there. That might be a potential. I don't know, Dom. I mean,
Yeah,
we- I mean,
we
we-
do it on a by load basis.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be some interlocals that do it, but that would be, there's some logistics and manning the facility and maintaining it, and you're kind of shoving more stuff through it maybe than it
Right.
would normally.
It would be great
happen.
if there was a cost, if we did do this, get a cost trade-off from it and some cooperative, something from it, but a couple of questions I had. So what's the lead time between implementation of a decant facility and the wash rack between scenarios 2 and 3? Is there a difference in the timeline? What's the timeline difference?
It's the same timeline. 2 and 3 is just the dropping 1% per year.
Okay.
That's the difference. The same timeline, just you're getting, it's 55544 versus 44433.
Okay, that's right, because it's the bottom. And then in
You're assuming more risk.
right. And then in between, how long, I'm sorry, how long, so once we say go for a decant facility, how long before it's in place when we say we want to do it?
From when you say go, it would be operational roughly 2 years.
2 years.
Probably looking at a 6 to 9 month design and a 12 to 15 month construction.
So in
Be
between,
safe.
so
Now, if you're
between
applying
now and
for
the
a
2 years.
If you're applying for a grant, you're pushing everything probably at least a year, just because the way the grant cycles work, they don't notify you and then you don't get an agreement. So it can delay it.
So no matter what, we've got 2 years of doing the status quo until it comes up, is what I'm hearing. Right? Yes.
It would be operational before the end of 2027 if you start in early 2026.
Okay. And then, so if we do get another finding or whatever, is the fact that we are doing something going to be the excuse to say, hey, don't notify? Okay.
I'm not an attorney, but I think showing that you are aware and taking the concern seriously and you're working to address it is a wonderful position to have, and is a defensible position that we can say, we understand, and here's our plan, and here's our commitment to making sure that we are taking your concerns seriously.
Thank you.
That's correct. That's typically how you respond to notice of violation. You lay out the steps of what you're going to do to fix it, and
Yeah.
that usually is sufficient.
Basically a corrective action.
With that all shared though, and back to some of the conversations and the answer to Councilmember Elliott's question, I still think a viable option is to look at the 44433, which still includes the decant facility, but go after the grant, might delay the project by a year, and could potentially save us a lot of money. If we get the money, our ceiling doesn't go so low. It would potentially stay just as high, even if the grant's only for 50%. The 44433 has the money built in there, might delay it by a year. And as I shared earlier, I had a good discussion with staff on legislative priorities, is one other potential way we could keep the ceiling from going low is as far as the paving of the area over there. We consider that when we talk about our legislative priorities as that being our legislative priority. And that would, if we get some of it, and we've been really pretty successful, that could help keep the ceiling, the floor from going so low. And we still, it might delay what you want by a year, but it's still on the table.
I guess I just want to point out that the difference between green and blue, we've talked about all of this, is 20 cents a year and $1 over 5 years. So, and we talk about going low in grants. I love going for grants. I love how successful we've been, but I want to be mindful that those can be challenging. And with ecology grants, more so.
I just want to clarify, it's not 20 cents a year. You're talking monthly rates, just.
It goes up 20 cents per month.
Okay.
And then in the course of $1 over 5 years. So
$1 or 1/5. And when we move into the others, it's a good point, but when we move into the next piece, we're going to see proposed huge jumps coming up. So I'm trying to think, and when you come back for whatever the next request is, all these dollars are going to add up.
I have one more question. Sorry. So Thurston County has a decant facility right in Lacey. Have we ever had a conversation with them? It's just right down the road about them allowing us to use their facility?
That conversation didn't happen because when we contract this out, the contractor will choose where to go and what's the best rate for them. Yeah. So they end up choosing to go at that location. I think Pierce County, I think, also has a decant facility, but I don't know if it's East County or West County. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the same place where the brine maker is.
There you go.
Yeah, just some clarification on the grant. So if we went that route, we would be looking at getting it as soon as possible for like this year, applying this year or next year between the 2 years, or
The earliest we could try would be next year, and you're probably looking at more like 27 before we would really, and grants for these kind of things, it can be challenging.
the only feedback I have about that is just monitoring the climate, because right now I know the legislature, any monetary demand or at least request, they're kind of right now very hesitant. So just monitoring what's going on in the legislature and the budget in statewide. So, but that's all I had to say about that.
The grant applications for the ecology funding are typically due in November of a year. And they have some steps before for eligibility in terms of, they want things adopted in a plan. I think that actually if you adopt new rates and we show that, no, these are the capital improvements plan for it, that does help you that, hey, this is being planned for. That's also something, for ecology as well. It's not just, well, someone had an idea. So I think that part of my hesitation on the ecology funding is like Keith says, for some reason, ecology has done a very good job on the sewer side of things, sewer treatment plants, sewer collection system, I&I removal, whatever it is. It's the state revolving fund, they call it the SRF. They do 50% grants, they do hardship, they have it all, just a well-oiled machine. You have dates, you know when it's coming, you ding, 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 ding. Stormwater, they tried to kind of merge into it, and it just has been clunky at best. It's just, well, that's not eligible. Oh, this is eligible. Well, you got to do a certain kind of pre-design report. Oh, well, we didn't approve the pre-design report before you try to go to construction. And we're just left going, well, what do you want? "Yeah, well, we want this." Okay, we give it to you. And, you know, Gus and I did a project, in DuPont where it was we were rehabbing stormwater, bioswales. We were rehabbing the bioswales, which was stripping out the material because the bioswale, the bio in the swale is you're treating the stormwater with this base layer with soil. So it doesn't just go in the ground. It's running through certain kind of soil amendment and grasses and everything. We had it all there. I think we applied for 5 facilities and they said, well, only 3 are eligible. Like, okay, why are these other 2 not eligible? Well, I don't remember the reason. So we said, fine, we'll just do the 3. And then we went through all the process. We got the money. We thought we had the money. And then we went out and designed it and built it. And then, well, you didn't, what was it? We didn't file something at some time. And then the person administering the grant left and he's gone. And I remember, Gus, specifically remember you saying, we are never touching this money again. This is the most painful process, but maybe in the rear view, you changed your mind. I don't know.
Time heals all wounds. Yeah.
And
That was only $300,000.
yeah, and I just feel the sense of just the history, the experience that you all have had. Like, you know, it's one thing to, you know, agree on one thing, but when you have to go through the thick of it, that's why I feel like your concerns are being fueled by your experiences in the past. I feel like you've been here before, and I mean, I've appreciated your historical knowledge. It helps us fill in a lot. So that, I guess I'm saying I resonate with what you're talking about, and about being self-sufficient, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And the other thing I'd just add, just because, you know, we have been flat. I mean, there are lots of cities who tie their rates to the construction cost index that would be a 3% minimum, but just to keep up with inflation, not even raising. So, and it has been flat in the past. So things to consider. I think Councilman Winkler is correct. I mean, the water is a big part of the story. That's next. And that's, well, are we going to do this with water? And, you know, maybe you pick a little higher on water and a little lower on storm just to help balance it. We're just giving you, I think we didn't go to the last slide, but in each scenario, staff recommendation is 2. We think we can live with 3, not staff's recommendation, but it's just lower floor.
Lower floor.
Lower floor.
Lower floor. With
We
hopefully,
just got jump height.
with hopefully the same end result, with hopefully, but I want to clarify with hopefully, you know, and the decant stays on the list for all the reasons. And so when you go after it, I know I'm asking a process, but I think we need to ask. And what I like about 4 though is it's still on the list, it's still built in, and we have a little flexibility because of a lower floor if we have to. And it's only lower for 1 year, and then it comes up quickly. But thoughts? And I'm only one person. I want to clarify. I'm just one council member. So the other ones might feel differently. So.
Well, can we move on to water and then, or just
Let's just hang out here.
go to the good water?
That's the
Not the storm water.
Yeah.
So we have to like change your brain and the dirty water.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
there's
just-
dirty.
Yeah, we just have good water in DuPont.
So, this slide, I believe, is very similar to the capital improvements that we presented last time, which was the 5 years. There's the generator replacement, and also that underground storage tank. I think Shauna, you have a underground storage fuel tank up at Bell Hill. You didn't tell us about it, but it's up there. And we need to decommission. So that one's that project, some seismic improvements, the GAC replacement. And then some other replacement in the first 5 years. And then, so that's under $4.5 million. And the next one, this slide up now is pretty impactful in our mind. And this kind of shows it's $13 million the next 5 years, which is Gus and me to some degree trying to push out the projects we can, trying to get them there, but you can't, it doesn't mean you just never do them. But that next 5 years is, it's 2.5x the first 5 years. So that's significant. You have a lot of water infrastructure that's not going to last forever. And then the final 5 years of a 15-year cycle is about a little under $6 million of improvements. So that's a little sobering. More on, we talk about decant facility on the storm side and can we do with that? Well, you're talking, your water facilities, you got a lot more. It's a much more valuable system. It's much more expensive to replace. You've got wells, you've got reservoirs, you've got pump stations. You've got carbon treatment plants, you've got chlorination stations. And that's just to get the water out of the ground treated off the site. That says nothing about all your pipes and hydrants and valves and all the stuff you can't see. I realize you can see the hydrants, but a lot of the stuff you can't see, no one knows. The services, the meters, that everything goes to the houses. So it's it's very significant in terms of the capital improvements.
Can I ask a question on this phase of it? Do we also, maybe it's a Gordon question, run the risk of having fines? I'm assuming everything we do is fineable, but do we have that same concern on your part about something pretty significant going and then we're like having to pay every day and get it fixed at the same time? Can you kind of correlate those?
Yeah, there's a governing body, which is the Department of Health, that essentially provides us a permit. But more importantly, is not necessarily a fine. And thank goodness we've never had to do a boil water notice in this situation. But what I'm more concerned about on the water side is, do I get someone sick? Do I essentially have a loss of water in a neighborhood because of valves not working out and what have you? And while the fines is one thing, it's more on, hey, the actual loss of service is almost catastrophic. Because if I can't deliver water to a residence, that residence is no longer inhabitable.
And I would assume that could be potential lawsuits if you make people sick with water.
Gus
We're
is
all sitting here
100%.
talking about the importance of it. So certainly there'd be a
Yes.
high price to pay for,
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you'd make people sick is bad enough, but
Yeah, Gus is absolutely right. We obviously have a permit from the Department of Health. They could fine us or regulate us, but, and I don't want to minimize the damage to human life. So I'm just speaking in a purely legal sense. The other liability would be individuals suing us for being poisoned or drinking contaminated water. And if we had enough individuals, they could do a class action lawsuit. And I'll note that, our PFAS lawsuit that we are luckily plaintiffs in, not defendants. But as I've noticed in the MDL in South Carolina, where they consolidate all those cases, there's something like 12,000 plaintiffs in that case. And a huge number of them, I mean, a relatively small percentage of them are water providers like us. Many of them, most of them are individuals who have cancer, who have other, chemical contaminants that they're seeking individual redress for. So yes, that's a very real possibility.
And then there's that. And then there's another risk just has to do with fire flow coverage. Coming out of the hydrants, there's a fire at a house, they go open the hydrant, I don't know, there was this fire down in LA that made the news, I think. So if there's a seismic event and your reservoirs are not up to seismic code and they fail and you lose your storage, you don't have water in the storage to, feed that hydrant. You don't have hydrant coverage, and, there's a fire and the fire department can't do it. It's another avenue of liability. If they come back and say, well, yes, I realize there's a big enough earthquake. It doesn't matter what you design it to, it's going to fall down probably. But again, it's the standard of care and the evaluation that you've got to meet the state seismic criteria for that. You've got one of the projects is upgrading the Hoffman Hill Reservoir with current seismic requirements, and those actually do change the anchor bolts you need to do and to get it all there so it doesn't fail. So that's another consideration that is kind of a water quantity issue versus a water quality issue. But there's also been there's cybersecurity stuff, there's breaches of that, there's people that have put substances into reservoirs that if you don't have the right monitoring, if you don't have an alarm, if you don't have a telemetry system that notifies you, if you don't complete security improvements to keep your facility secure, and you don't spend the money to do it, boy, it sure seems, silly if something happens that, well, why not? Why didn't you do this stuff? And so, again, it's we don't come at it from the standpoint of, well, just paranoid scenarios, what could really happen? But, it's planning, and that's, the right thing to do for your citizens and in our purview anyway. So, similar color palette and pattern and meanings, a little different though. Orange is what we presented on the Tuesday study session on October 28th. Green is corrected. And you'll notice with the same rates, there's a pretty big jump in 2028. The floor is not 1.085 million. The floor is 1.4 million. So the mistake I found is by law, you are required to fund your hydrants out of the general fund. There was a Lane versus Seattle case. I don't know if Gordon knows about it, but probably does. What's that? Okay, well, anyway, there's a transfer that Karma makes sure that 60. She knows the exact amount gets transferred every year. I didn't have it in here on the transfer. I also had some years of improvements off a little bit. So anyway, that's good news that for the rates that we presented last time, the 12-10-8-6-4, the floor is 1.4 million. So blue is okay with those corrections. What about if we take it down near 1 million? So we took the floor down to 1.005 million in 2029, but the rates changed to a 98744. So instead of 12-10-8-6-4, it's 98744. The total, I did run the number, Mike, so I know you were going to do it yourself anyway. But the total,
But that's okay.
so the total percent of the green is 46.7%.
Yeah.
Over 5 years, and blue is 36.2. Is that what you got?
36.33.
Oh.
But I'm not gonna argue over 0.13.
So
We're right there.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, so those, those, again, we'd prefer green, but probably could live with blue in terms of that floor being that $1 million. Now, $1 million is the same number we used in 2018. So that was our comfort level then. So do I like 1.4 better? I certainly do. But, and then, scenario 4 is, maintaining the $1 million minimum, but delaying every project in this 5-year, delaying it a year. So pushing every project back a year.
And can I speak to that? Because pushing things back, an idea, but you're saying with the costs, pushing it back would save X amount of dollars now, but a year from now, when we do have to do the project, it could actually cost more than if we did it now.
Yes.
And that's because of what? Transportation, fees? What are the fees in that? Well, inflation
Well,
is just going
Your
up.
construction price index.
Yeah.
Which generally is higher. Your construction price index is generally higher than your inflationary index. We always think of
Okay.
the inflationary index, that's for you and me when we go to the grocery store and goods and services.
Yeah,
Your construction price index is a different index. And that has exceeded in recent times.
Yeah, it's gone.
even more than
A
like
bit more than your
inflation for the average
Yeah,
family.
so it's
This
higher
was
than
even
your
higher.
inflationary rate. So your construction rate has been higher than your inflationary rate, and that's where the concern is.
Right.
And if you
'cause
look
a
at-
lot of construction is fuel related, labor
Right.
related. So, but on the storm side, we were taking the one decamp project and moving it forward and back to see what it is. This is different when you take every project, and now it's not just the 5-year projects, you basically have to
Mhm.
take, the 15 years we showed you, you're delaying every single one of those projects for a year. So what it allows you to do is that first year, you can see in the jump in the magenta from 2025 to 2026, it goes up from 3.269 to 3.609. That's because you didn't do any projects. So it delays them all a year. So it's basically saying, hey, we have all these things that could go wrong. We're just gonna kind of sit for a year.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know
There is
the,
a do nothing alternative that is the orange,
yeah.
the salmon, but the magenta is do nothing next year. But
And
it is a lower rate.
I don't know about the business and things like that, but I think right now it was Department of Labor did some statistic, half of the states are already considered some form of high inflation and recession now. And the projections for that are continuing. So that mirrors what this cost is. Is that what you're saying? Like if we're as citizens just in our daily lives experiencing inflation, this level of inflation can be even greater than what our percent would be.
I
as
think
just
looking at it
citizens.
from a historical perspective, and
Yeah,
he,
yeah.
he talked about this, if we were talking about for construction, I wouldn't want to put it on initially on the inflationary rate. If we could, that's fine. I don't want to put a construction rate because it is
Right,
different
okay.
and higher. I mean,
Fair.
so that
Yes.
it's been higher over the last 10 or 12 years, and we've seen the cost of construction. Gus and I have talked about this too. I've had to change my mindset of what is a mile of road for mill and overlay cost, right? And it's amazing to me in a short period of time how much that has gone up because construction costs, the price per square foot, I remember not too long after we started, $250 a square foot was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. Now in my mind, it's $1,000 a square foot minimum, right? So, I mean, these are what we're seeing in terms of the construction, which is outpacing just our inflationary.
That's what you were saying earlier. Thank you. It's outpacing what we're experiencing as people that have inflation that we're battling.
And there's other
The projection
factors,
is upward, right?
And then
Okay.
there's other factors that are things like big climate, where you can have, hungry contractors or you don't, and you can't always pick exactly when you bid a job. And then when you have multiple disciplines, like electrical just happens to be one that all the electrical contractors are so busy, they can just name their price and we just do the stuff. It's like, well, yeah, you got to power these pumps. It's like, well, okay, but why does electrical have to be half the whole project when there's so much more stuff? So, this is, so when we project out, but the magenta one is delaying everything a year. Yellow is, just so to speak, burning it to the ground, just putting the floor at zero. Zero.
Nobody's
I
asking
mean,
for that. I want.
That means Gus
Before you
just
try to
goes-
spin it.
he just goes fishing in his wallet. He's like, man, I got $481. That's all I got. And you'll see there that even after that, it takes a really big jump just to keep above zero. So
Just to stay above.
that's a,
Right.
definitely not recommend that one. And the salmon one just shows you that you're digging a hole. That Gus is down at the casino trying to win $1.454 million in 2030.
You're a smart guy. You probably do.
Yeah, so just it may not show, but 2028, 2029, 2030, those are parentheses. We are negative in those accounts. So if the utility fund ever goes into the negative, we have to go up to our partner or our parent fund, which is a general fund, and then just try to grab from there. Or we take a commercial loan at some ridiculous rate and try to fund it from there. So it's this last scenario, the scenario 6, is we wanted to show if we did nothing, what would happen. And this is the kind of the bookend. We are obviously not recommending this scenario, but I think it was important to show this as a bookend in comparison to everything else.
And you're saying that if worst case, I'm not saying that, but the general fund is where those funds would be retrieved from.
The general fund is always the parent fund.
Yeah.
Now, just like all parents, you may want to teach your child a lesson, such as, hey, I didn't now have to go get a commercial loan at some ridiculous rate so I can cover this gap in here at that point. So those things happen. There are utility companies, something breaks, and they didn't have a fund balance to dip from, so they have to go someplace else, and that is now a commercial loan. I do not want to be in that situation.
And I'm sure that has a nice interest rate to it as well and costs quite a bit. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I do have a couple comments or questions. Again, first, thanks for working the numbers. Greatly appreciate it. 36.2% is way better than 46.66%. I will say that. I do want to clarify though, just so everyone realizes that's still high. I keep on stressing that because when we come and start talking about where or what projects we want to do next, we've got to remember what we've raised already when we're dealing with our citizens. That's still 9% next year, 8%, 7%, 4%. So that's, those are big increases. But it's better than scenario 1 or scenario 2. So it's definitely better. I have to ask, and I don't know the answer to this, if you didn't do the math, and I'll see if you agree, it's 30% if we did scenario 4. If we delayed it a year, it'd be, and those would still be relatively large increases, 7% next year, 6%, followed by 5, 5, and 4. So just, a straightforward question, is delaying an option at all? It gets it into a better number, but still a high number. Or taking the ceiling low and going with the 36 better.
It goes back to risk. That's where it really comes down to it. And I have to essentially bookend this with our earlier discussions of, we have 30-year components. We have 30-year facilities in there. I had, when you all asked me, hey, how long does stuff last? I had that weird look of 75 years, but Dom had to correct me. The moving parts last 20 years. The pipe in the ground lasts 75 years. So I am concerned we're living on borrowed time for some of these components. And it's just one right after the other. The hill does not get smaller, unfortunately. That's why we showed the second 5-year and the last 5-year, different from where the stormwater, where we can crest that one project and then we're back to normal. That is the risk that we take on, which is there an unscheduled event that happens that then we have to essentially take on? And I am concerned.
No, I understand that. I appreciate that concern. I think we have to have this in-depth discussion though, when we go forward with the other projects, that we make sure that we look out, because we have a facility that's being paid by water rates. That's why we're toward the top. And I just want to make sure that we're aware of these and we're aware that where our rates are going to be. Okay. But we have to have safe water. We have to have safe water. 36% is better than 46%. Okay.
I got the exact same number on the magenta.
Okay. There we go. Okay. That would have been nicer, but I'm a little uncomfortable with that one. Okay. And ideally we could shift it a year, but I don't know on that one. At least with the other one, we're not shifting it. If we did shift it 1 year, at least the ceiling still stays high, if I recall, on shifting it a year. Not the ceiling, the floor doesn't go so low. Let me clarify that.
Correct.
Okay, so, it's an interesting discussion between 36 or 30 with a higher floor. And I'm not sure on that one.
And this has to be sometimes, it brings me back to when people did their research on COVID and everyone became an expert, doctor or whatever. I stood away from that. I just did whatever my doctor told me. So I appreciate with your expertise, you're answering questions that from my perspective, I'll speak for myself, I come from no expertise in these issues around ecology and science. But I do really think, I understand there's some benefits to everything, and my opinion has kind of swayed in this conversation. That's why these are so valuable for me, is you come in with an open mind and you see where your pathway goes. I don't think delaying a year for what end? It's going to eventually have to take place. You either make that progress now or it's coming, and it could come with risk. It could come with a higher price, right? So mine is more kind of in this area, but I also feel like how you take care of yourself and your home and your car. And again, maybe this is me, but I take my car in for maintenance. I get my diabetes checked every 3 months so that I don't forget something. I don't take my blood sugars and I go to the doctor and I'm at 300 or something crazy. Do you know what I mean? And then the price to me, and this is the only analogy I can do because I'm not a scientist or an engineer like you two, but then that lack of being proactive literally could put me at great risk. Driving a car, and I'm entitled somewhat with that I can maintain it. I recognize that. That's a privilege I have, but that makes me feel safe on the road. Does that make sense? I'm trying to kind of get all of these big concepts that are very scientific and engineering. And my son's doing electrical engineering right now. I don't even know what he does. He can barely talk to me. But I'm trying to put this in that context. And for me, it is kicking it down the road's never a good idea. I've never felt in any part of my life, professionally or personally, that's ever a good idea. So it's more where can I fall on that? And I'm also at heart a very proactive person. I don't like risk, and I don't want risk to come at a greater cost than if I had done something earlier. So those are kind of my thoughts as we go through this. And I just really appreciated your patience, because I can imagine with your degrees and your expertise, it's hard because I just have genuine questions and I don't have your expertise. But back to the COVID, sometimes I have to trust the people that have that scientific and engineering background that I do not have. So thank you for all of the questions you're willing to field for me. It's just, I felt my place to kind of swing in back, and it's so valuable to do that. And this whole thing has been really appreciated. So thank you.
Well, I kind of echo what Susan says too. And I'm a real fiscal conservative. I really am.
Yeah.
But I value our water. I value our water systems, and our city is getting older. And so I'm fearful we should not kick the can down the road, in my opinion. We should maintain what we have and maintain it well. So I'm comfortable, and we haven't had a water rate in the last 5 years. And So we're going to have to make up for that for a bit, but I'm comfortable with going with scenario 3.
Are we going to be talking about these in colors? Because that would be so much easier for me.
Blue.
Okay, yeah, so the blue, right? Green. So I'm just saying, will that? Yeah. Am I speaking like too far ahead and someone tell me to be quiet? But is that really what we're going to come down to? In these two pieces, what color are you supporting? Does that make sense? Because that's what we asked for. You guys delivered it in spades. It's super clear. Do we get to say what, is it okay if we say kind of where, or not? Can I do that, Keith?
Yeah.
Am I,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gordon?
you're free to express. This is a roundtable.
Yeah, work session, roundtable.
Okay,
Free
but
to,
proud
yeah.
of me for stopping my ADHD brain and before I'm unfiltered.
No, it's not a vote, but this is the time for you to make, if you want to
Yeah, I understand.
make your case, then yeah, feel free.
I'm between green and blue. Really, and I wonder, the deciding factor for me is I'm not the expert at this table. But at the other side, I am representing people that are going to be hit with an increase, right? So those two forces are really like, they could not be more opposed to one another. But I always tend to err on the side of people who are experts in areas that I am not. And maybe that comes from years of teaching, when people want to tell me what it's like to be a teacher and they've never been in the classroom, and I get really offended by that. So I'm just trying to be really, really open to that. But I would say those would be mine between the two. And I'm not sure where, but
Yeah.
definitely either green or blue, 100%.
Yeah, for me, I'm not sold on anything yet, but if I
Yeah.
were to, where my gut's taking me is for the stormwater on blue and then more toward green for the water right now, as much as not the greatest. And I think that's a part of the issue that we have as a body here, is that we've got to take all this in consideration, and knowing that some of the stuff won't be popular, but also at the same time, knowing that we got to be proactive in what we're doing, and then how much risk are we each really wanting to assume when it comes to this stuff. So I think a lot of this stuff we can actually explain to the residents. I think I'll have a harder time defending why we didn't do anything for the last 5 years. And saying this is why we had to do it now, that kind of sucks. But I think when you boil it down, I think most of these arguments that are being made can be explained with some reason. So that's where I'm at.
I don't have a microphone. Is that on purpose?
Don't be me.
Just asking. Just asking. I'm all on the green. 100 on green, and it's unfortunate we didn't do a study in 2023.
Yeah.
But I think we're able to make up for that now. So I think the green fund is the best for sure.
Yeah. Okay, keep in mind, everybody, that you see on this chart, you got the first year, this is 2025. 2025 is gone. So,
Yeah.
we're talking 2026. You can just.
Here's my chart.
Well, my quick summary would be blue and blue. All right. I think that's trying to find the balance.
Okay, so we're on the last slide. We didn't talk about it in this session because I think in the last session, I think we got there related to the system development charges, where we're going to essentially not necessarily get to the very maximum, but get very close to a higher amounts for stormwater and water for system development charges. We've showed you the different rate scenarios for both stormwater and water. There are either 2 or 3, which is either blue or green within what we're proposing. One thing I need to do, because it's associated with our upcoming schedule. So on November 25th, I'd like to present a ordinance first reading. And then on December 9th, the same ordinance, a second reading, so that we can wrap up the year with a approved rate. But in order for me to do that, the biggest thing is the rates, obviously, right? So I'm not saying we're voting, but I need to be able to essentially move forward with that draft ordinance.
Yeah.
With either, should I go with blue or green, from there?
Well, maybe this is again naive question, what is stopping us from that piece to have you present something and have us vote on it?
I think that's where we're at. I mean,
So that, it seems like kind of where we're at, right? We're gonna have to, we can't just be the whole time.
Right.
So-
So inside the ordinance is this, looks like it's a table. It looks like, if you had the old peachy folder, they had the multiplication table. So there's the tables. I can run the spreadsheets and show the two different scenarios to swap out. But I guess one thing is, do I show two scenarios?
You do that.
Well, okay, so right now, this meeting is to get everyone's temperature, right? But obviously it's not a vote, can't vote harvest, And we certainly could, in individual meetings with council members that Keith and the mayor have, could also get some temperature, but again, be careful not to vote harvest, but get a sense. But really, I think, now the best thing is for the staff to present what they think is best, taking everything you have said. And having said that, then the council, when they have an ordinance in front of them, has opportunity to not vote for it or to seek to amend. You have other parliamentarian tactics at this point. But my advice to staff is I think they have a good sense of the temperature. I can work with them as well. And if there's anyone who wants to, give input to the staff individually, they're free to do that. That's not violating any OPMA or anything like that, as long as you don't talk amongst yourselves about it, right? But if someone says, look, I just have real concerns about X or Y, and the staff can get a better sense, and then it can maybe bring to you, based on this conversation, based on what they think is best, based on any input they get later, what they think is the most successful and the most of value and the most in keeping with what we've heard tonight. That's primarily the best way to do this. I mean, I suppose if everyone around the table is like, yeah, this color, we're all down, that'd make their job easier. But it's a democracy. Not everyone's going to necessarily agree. So the staff, I think, is probably going to end up bringing to you what they think is best and what they've gleaned from this conversation. I know that's vague, but that's kind of how this process works. So.
I totally like that. I think after today, a staff getting together based on what we've heard makes sense. Maybe we wear a shirt based on the color we're going to vote on. I might just add a little elementary fun spirit to the whole thing, because that's where my mind is.
Please don't say that to me out loud. No.
Okay, I won't.
Okay. Mike shows up in a purple shirt.
You know what? He will rock the purple. No, that would be really nice, because I think there's maybe a little bit different consensus now on a new way of looking at it. But I just really appreciate you guys. This was really, I feel I'm walking away knowing just enough to be dangerous in a good way. But thank you. It's been a lot, really. Yes, I feel much more settled. So.
Council members, can I just say one more? This is a quick parliamentarian note. It's 8:30 now. Under the council rules and the ordinance, if we can only go to 10, we have to stop our meetings at 10 under our own rules. So I don't think we're going to get quite there. We're probably right on the edge, but just a warning. If we're getting close to that time, I'll have to do some assistance for the mayor to help him. What we'd have to do is table the remaining agenda items to the next meeting. I don't think we're going to be there. I'm just being mindful of the time, letting you know kind of what happens with that magic 10 o'clock point. So,
But we're to continue until that time, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm just saying that we still got a lot of business ahead of us. So I'm just
Thank you.
say this proactively.
I think we can probably knock out 5.2 and then get a break and move up to the dais after that. And public hearing will be pretty quick. So we'll see how we do here. But let's thank you, Dom, Gus, for the information. It's appreciated.
Okay. Take care. We do math the same.
Okay, so we're moving to 5.2 capital facilities plan discussion. Again, we have Director Kincaid.
Yes, and Gus here. So we're both gonna, this will not take very much conversation. Really what we wanted to do, and it's in the whole big dialogue that's going on right now with the comp plan and the capital facilities and utilities element and planning and CIPs and rate studies and all that. So what we really wanted to do, and maybe we thought this would help, but maybe it doesn't. But what we're talking about in this cover sheet is you have a list of items for a 15-year period that we have identified as projects that will need to be considered. So this is considered a capital facility plan, and you want to think about that kind of as a long-range planning tool. Whereas the subset of the 6-year projects with the funding identified, we call those the CIPs, or the 6-year plans. The GMA requires the 6-year. It requires that in our comp plan, and it requires the list that you've seen, in the rate study, and you'll see it in the comp plan for parks and transportation. And that is required to not only identify those projects, but identify funding sources for those projects. So that's really kind of the programming piece of what we're talking about in terms of getting these things in our program budgeted and queued in for doing the work. So this list represents the long-range plan, if you will, the capital facility planning part. And why would we do this? Because, we have limited funding, as we've just spent the last hour and a half talking about. We have a high level of need and a low level of funding, not unlike any other city. Bless you, Mayor. And so this is it's a tool for you to really look at efficiency, whether or not you can maybe, figure out how to piggyback on things to save money by figuring out, this coordination. And also when you have these kinds of lists identified and you've been thoughtful about it, then it also makes your ability to get grant funds and loan funds if you need them. So just say, whatever you decide to do on the rate study, you have some catastrophic event that now you need to go out and get a loan for. You're in a much better position because it looks like you're being very diligent in your planning. And so this would be something that it would be adopted by resolution. So it's not an ordinance. You adopt this list, and this helps to keep everybody, helps the clarity to know that these are things that are going to need to be, that are aging, will need to be considered in putting into that programming I talked about. So this list is what kind of backfills in the 6-year. As you take the projects off of your 6-year, these bump up and go into the 6-year. So you're always keeping that going. And I will turn it over to Gus. And I don't think there's much more to say.
Oh, no, not much more. If it looks like the stormwater and the water look familiar, it is the same projects, just in a different format in the previous presentation. You do see the facility listing here is essentially replacing major components of our buildings when it comes down to it. So this is looking at it from that perspective. And then did you talk about parks? Okay. And then what's missing from this is parks. So I need to add the parks list to this one.
And that's really it, just not that we're trying to be the bearer of like lots of expensive bad news here, but this is something for, your awareness in terms of this is a good tool to help you prioritize and understand the long-term needs of running your city and your infrastructure here.
So is the community center in here? Is that under parks?
The community center is, go ahead, Gus.
Yeah. It should be under the facilities, but right now I have not listed anything too much on there because we have an initial I guess, feasibility study that we're trying to execute at the beginning of the year. And what that will tell us is, hey, is it markedly feasible for us to actually make it as a community center, an event center from there, and also come up with costs. And then if we can get that done by June of 2026, we'll now be able to take some of that information. And if it does markedly say we can do this, then we'll be applying for more LTAC funds for the community center. So I didn't put any community center in here because we're kind of.
We have a path, we also have a pathway.
We
that
do,
If,
but-
if,
Yeah.
I mean, we really have a 4-year plan that we could redo and renovate that. You
And
know.
but we'll put it on there once we know what the cost, what the price tag is, when that feasibility study is done. Any other?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barb, Gus. Let's take 5 minutes. After that, we're gonna move the dais and we'll go into the public hearing after that.
Hey, Gordon, if you blend the blue and the green choices, you get teal. Can you come up with a teal option?
That would be another 3-hour council.
Just saying, you know, kind of a turquoisey southwestern kind of deal. Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, it's 8:44 and we will continue the meeting. Tonight, we have a hearing regarding the 2026 Transportation Benefit District budget. Are there any council members that have a conflict of interest which could prohibit you from participating in the public hearing? Seeing none, people wishing to be heard at this hearing should call 253-215-8782 with webinar ID 830-8733-84367 and passcode 482583. The city clerk will admit callers one at a time. Once called upon, please state your name and address for the record, and 3 minutes will be allowed per person. It is now 8:44. I will open the public hearing. The purpose of this hearing is for the city council to hear testimony on the proposed 2026 Transportation Benefit District budget. Order of speaking will be staff presentation, and then testimony from anyone wishing to speak, and then any comments from the council. So tonight, first, as part of the staff presentation, Finance Director Karma Oaksmith will give us that information. Go ahead, Karma.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council and the residents of DuPont. We have the Transportation Benefit District budget for 2026. And if you look up at the screen right now, you'll see Exhibit A. That should look familiar to you because it is the project list that we brought forth to you prior and you approved. When you look at that, it shows the projects that we would like to complete in our transportation budget next year. And I can go through it quickly if you'd like. There's a street sign and repair and replacement for $5,000, street marking and repair for $5,000, safety improvements, which could be crosswalk restriping or striping on the street where an area has worn down, the ADA transition plan that the team would like to finish in the next year. Unfortunately, this year we didn't get to it, so we put that in the plan. And then down under operations, you have the traffic signal maintenance, and that's important to keep those traffic lights maintained by WSDOT. Street striping and crack sealing. This is new projects, the crack sealing that we like to do within the city to keep the roads in repair. And then street fund general operations. And what that is to help pay for some of the salaries for the street team. That's $290,000 in the project list. So if we go to Exhibit B, it will show you a budget summary. You can look at from left to right, the 2023 actuals, the 2024 actuals, what we adopted in 2025. And if you look in 2025, you'll see a revenue reduction based on the 0.1% sales tax. We're not receiving as much as we anticipated. We hope that that changes, but for safety's sake and conservative sake, we've reduced that. And then if you look further down, you'll see the expenditures, a subtotal, and then also you'll see a negative $249,000. Those are projects that we are not completing this year. We have some projects in the works. We're not going to do that ADA transition plan. We are not doing phase 4B, the engineering, and then the projects that we are working on, they did do some crack sealing, and the HSIP project, which as you remember is the crosswalk project that we've gotten a fully funded grant-wise for that I believe the engineer has spoke to you before, Gus has. And then if you go to the next exhibit, oh wait, I'm sorry, don't go to the next exhibit. I apologize. We should look at 2026. That's why we're here. So you can see in 2026, your beginning fund balance based on the estimates from the adopted 2025 budget brings you up to $174,077. We anticipate receiving $228,000 in revenue. And what we did is that's the tab revenue that we get from license plates, about $100,000 a year. And then we reduced the 0.1% to a more conservative effort, hoping that maybe we'll get more, but we would like to be conservative that way. We don't misstep. Investment interest has been very fruitful this year, so we moved that up a little bit, hoping that rates stay or get better. And then as you move down, you'll see the expenditures. That 95,000 is part of the project list I just showed you. Some legal notices, what we pay for insurance in this TBD fund. The state audit fees are zero because they only audit us every 2 years in that TBD budget, so there'll be nothing next year. Administration fees, and then the rest of the projects list that I just showed you in the exhibit prior. Leaving estimated ending fund balance for 2026 for the Transportation Benefit District of $109,560. Then the next exhibit is very small, and I apologize for that. Oh, Marcy will make it larger. There we go. What this does is just show you a 6-year projection. Our actuals in 24, what we've adopted in 25, a revision to 25 that I just reviewed, what we just showed for 26, and then just looking a little out to the future with a few minor, changes doing some inflation changes and so forth. And that is it for TBD. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, we'll get those in a minute here. Clerk, have there been any written comments submitted regarding the 2026 TBD budget?
No.
Written comments can still be submitted to the city clerk until the close of the hearing. They will be entered into the record and sent to city council members. In addition, if anyone has any questions on the subject, please do not hesitate to call our main line and staff will assist you with getting the answers to your questions. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on the TBD budget? Please state your name, address slowly and clearly for the record. And you have 3 minutes. Okay.
As you go out in the years beyond 2026, I think we really need to look at our connection of our residents to public transportation options and connection to regional public transportation. And I see this is all internal stuff, but we need to also look at down the road of and making sure that our residents have connection, transportation into the region. If we have a very bright high school student that doesn't drive, and they get to the STEM school in Tacoma, in such other scenarios, do we have seniors that are no longer able to drive because of sight or something? Can they get to public transportation? It's not just a sound transit that gets us on rush hour traffic times.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, at this time, are there any questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Gassick?
Yes, thank you. I was wondering if you could explain a little more about the $126,000 discrepancy on the revenue portion. That's like more than a third of the projection. So what happened there?
We normally get about 100,000 for the license plates. And so we passed that 0.1% sales tax and it didn't come into projection. It's a convoluted kind of projection that we'd made. It's based on no past. We didn't have anything to back it up, so to speak. And so we did a projection and it hasn't been coming in.
Is it that the money hasn't come in or it came in and it wasn't what we expected?
Correct. It came in, it wasn't what we expected. Like the first 2 months were less than $12,000. And then it started getting higher and higher. And I don't have the stats in front of me, but we were like thinking maybe there was a big delay and it just hasn't come in.
Okay, thank you.
And I can get you more information if you'd like.
That's okay. Thanks, Carmen.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from council members or comments? Councilmember Elliott?
Oh, yeah, just a brief comment. So I think it would be helpful next time to separate out, we've got the line for vehicle license fees, and then if we could get a line for the 0.1% sales tax, I think that would help us clarify.
No problem. I can update that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other council member questions? Seeing none, there being no further testimony, I will close the public hearing at 8:53. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Deputy Mayor Winkler. Oh,
Mr. Mayor.
Point of order.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Yeah, we need to go back and pass the,
oh, the resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry
And
about that.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we pass resolution number 25-027, adopting the 2026 Transportation Benefit District budget.
Councilmember Gassick,
I'll second.
any further discussion? In that case, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye. Oppose? Thank you. The resolution is passed. Now we'll go to the consent agenda. Deputy Mayor Winkler.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass the consent agenda, specifically resolution number 25-028.
Councilmember Elliott.
Oh, I second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Oppose? The consent agenda is approved. We'll move on to unfinished business. Item 8.1, approving the ordinance number 25-1160, setting the 2026 EMS property levy. This is the second reading. Director Oaksmith, is there additional information that we need here?
Nothing has changed since the last meeting. What this does for the EMS property tax is it would ask the county to do full levy for the amount that the city can have, no banking. So my recommendation is to pass the ordinance. Thank you.
This is the second reading. Deputy Mayor Winkler.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 25-1160, setting the 2026 EMS property levy.
Councilmember Wargo.
I second.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Thank you. We'll move to item 8.2, approving ordinance number 25-1161, setting the 2026 regular property levy. This is also a second reading. Director Oaksmith, is there additional information on this?
No additional information and nothing has changed. This we are asking council for your blessing to pass the full levy for the property tax for 2026. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Winkler.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 25-1161, setting the 2026 regular property tax levy.
Councilmember Walton.
Second that.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Oppose? That ordinance has been approved. I don't have any further comments tonight. Are there additional comments from any council members? Councilmember Gassick.
I was just going to let you know that I have my first Pierce County Lodging Tax Advisory Committee meeting tomorrow. So I did get voted in at their last discussion meeting. I forget what they call it, but I'll be attending the first one tomorrow from 1 to 2:30. So I'll give you guys some feedback on that.
Councilmember Elliott.
Just kudos to the Parks Department again for a good event that they held at the Steilacoom Community Center. And I think it's great that we're doing partnerships like that. So thank you.
Any additional council comments? Okay, the city administrator, Keith, do you have any comments tonight?
being aware of the time, just one quick thing. Tomorrow from 5 to 6:30 in the council chambers is the volunteer appreciation. So if you can make it, that would be wonderful. It should be a good event. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Keith? Okay, seeing none and seeing no more business, it is now 8:58.